Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast presented by Blue Water Climate Control. Be sure and check them out at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. Give them a buzz at 865-299-2290. That's Blue Water Climate Control for all your HVAC needs. Whatever you got going on, they'll take care of it, from cleanouts to rebuilds to overhauls, new systems, whatever you need. They're going to take care of you with the right repair the right way. That's at Blue Water Climate Control. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Tuesday as the Volunteers going to scrimmage here this morning. We'll have more details of the scrimmage coming up this afternoon after we meet with Josh Heupel. But guys, what is important for this team for this scrimmage? Hey, Austin, I'll start with you. What do you think is important for scrimmage number 2?
Start kind of figuring out, who you can count on, figure out who your quarterback's going to be, figure out what playmakers you can count on both sides of the ball, kind of figure out, I don't know if you have to necessarily have your 5 down, but you need to start figuring out what combination of offensive line works. Is that Cade at tackle? Is it Cade at guard? Can you afford to play Cade at guard with how thin you are at tackle? I just think that ultimately you've got to figure out your best combination at several different positions, but specifically offensive line and quarterback.
Rob, what about you?
Yeah, the quarterback is the most obvious thing in the room, but essentially 2 weeks out from playing your first game. I think you need to know who your top 2 are, and you can start structuring practice that way that those 2 guys get all the reps. It's somebody's feelings are going to be hurt after tomorrow, but I just don't think there's any way around it. I think you have to do it. I don't think you can keep repping 3 guys 2 weeks, before you play and giving all 3 guys an equal shot. Tomorrow, time to have a hard conversation with somebody tomorrow. And if you're a coach, hopefully that conversation is made easier because it's pretty apparent. Players know. And I'm with AP, not just on the offensive line, but I think everywhere. You need to leave this one with a pretty good idea of what your 2 deep is across the board. So you can start, here's your scout team guys. Here's the guys that are getting live reps in practice. I think you need to have a good handle on what your top 44 looks like when you leave tomorrow.
I may be wrong in this, but and I'm not trying to cause any kind of panic or anything like that. It feels like this is a big day for the offense. This is a big scrimmage for the offense. And not just because the defense had the better of them in the first scrimmage, but you just haven't heard a ton of buzz about this offense. You know what I'm saying? It's like every time you ask, it seems like they're having a harder time getting in rhythm. And I know Josh Heupel, Austin, said that, they're on track and everything's going to be fine. But if they're going to be on track, then I think this is a day where the offense has got to bounce back pretty good and they've got to get some things going. I think for the overall offense, finding some rhythm, it's time for that unit to move in that direction, because I think they've just been a little helter-skelter through the first couple of weeks of fall camp. At least that's the vibe I get. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the vibe I got about this offense.
They've got to be clean, and I think they've got to come motivated. Both. I think that several position rooms, heard, following last Thursday's scrimmage about how their defensive counterparts, beat them up pretty good. And so if you've got any pride in you, you come motivated, ready to flip the script, later today. And then, like I said, you've got to be clean. Part of that starts with starting at 1st and 10 and not 1st and 15, like they did several times last Thursday, and not playing behind the chains. So, I think it's a combination of everything. But to me, it's nothing they can't correct. To me, that's a good sign. Like, these are the mistakes they made last week are things that are correctable.
Rob, defensively, I know Josh Heupel is going to play it down the middle, that, you don't want one side of the ball to dominate, and certainly nobody's done that. But there's got to be a little more. You got to be sleeping a little better at night, don't you? If you're on this Tennessee coaching staff, with the kind of what you're hearing about the defense and what you're seeing about the defense on the practice field. They're a very different looking unit, and they're a different performing unit right now than they were at any point in the spring.
Yeah, and I wonder, and I'm not trying to say anything negative about somebody coming from, UCF's conference, because it's proven time and time again. Urban Meyer went from Bowling Green to Utah to the Hall of Fame. Guys can coach at lower levels, but if they get a chance. But I just wonder, you look at all the Power 5 experience on the defensive side of the ball, and I wonder if that's kind of shown up in the sense of urgency they know they need to have for what they're going to see this fall. And again, I'm not denigrating the other guys at all, because I do not believe that you have to have played, coach in the SEC to be successful. I just think maybe it makes it easier at the start to know where that bar is at and how hard you maybe need to push your kids.
That's an interesting point, because we've heard from a bunch of assistant coaches, and on the particularly the offensive assistants have had very kind remarks, glowing remarks about any individual player asked about. And I know Josh Heupel's, about positivity. Rodney Garner was as real as anybody's ever going to be. Now that's Rodney's personality, but Rob, he talked about guys needing to understand the standard. He even referenced it in the press conference. I think you wrote about him. I think he said something, if I'm recalling right, that this is not the Pac 8, 12, 14 or big whatever. I mean, this is the SEC, and it's different. You've even heard some of his players talk about it's the SEC, it's different. When you talk about Caleb Tremblay and Terry, it does feel like that those veteran guys maybe are talking a little bit more in that way.
Yeah, I could say, and I think that's the message is reflected from their head coach. I'd be interested to see or hear. I mean, Willie Martinez he's not wired the way Rodney is. I don't think he's going to come down hard on kids. But I mean, Rodney's wired differently, and I wonder if that didn't show up, and because that's the unit that Josh Heupel was talking about the most after last Thursday's scrimmage work was the defensive line. It wasn't close, and you wonder if bringing some of that tough love the way he has isn't the reason for that.
Yeah, and it is there's an adjustment period here, Austin. I mean, the transfer players, as I mentioned, have talked about this. I mean, from the media attention to the intensity of practice. I mean, for those guys, it's different, and it's something they're adjusting to.
Yeah, to the depth, hey, how many guys were better than DJ Terry at Kansas? So constantly he's up there at the front of the line. Well, there are other guys on par with him here, so it's not like he's just at the front of the line over and over again. So I think all that matters. I think it's easier for a guy like Brandon Turnage, who's coming from Alabama. I mean, to me, like the speed and everything, to me, for him is probably a lot slower, or the wow factor or the attention or any of that stuff than guys like Kamal Haddon, who came, was at Auburn for a semester, but before that was JUCO, for DJ Terry, for Caleb Tremblay. I mean, I get USC is a powerhouse school, but the attention there and the kind of intensity around SEC football is totally different than Pac-12 football. So Tennessee's going to have to rely on all those guys, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to be a factor this fall. And hey, it's just such a everybody. How many people were making snap judgments off the defense in the spring? Because I heard several.
I was too.
A way different looking group, way different. I mean, just if you just add back the guys that were injured, they're a way different group. Then you add in all the guys we just talked about, and it's just night and day. Now, does that mean they're going to be the 85 Bears? Absolutely not. But they're also not, matadors either, going ole, and those teams run by.
Yeah, and I think you have to be careful not to make snap judgments about anything. With the limited sample size that we see, and
100%,
and just now heading into the second scrimmage, and I want to be clear that I'm not saying that. I am personally surprised that the offensive line maybe has not performed better than what they performed at to this point. That's one of my bigger surprises from a quote negative side, if you will. On the flip side of that, Rob, Byron Young's a lot better than I thought he was going to be. And I know Rodney was tempered, and I know you've been talking about Byron Young all fall camp, but he's causing some people some problems, and a lot of people that are watching him practice say he's going to cause a lot of people some problems all year long. I mean, this is a great land by Tennessee, and as a guy who you might have to scheme a little bit for, but at some point in time this season if you're an offense.
Yeah, and it's a perfect scenario. I mean, it's a dream scenario for Tennessee. If it works out, he doesn't have to be an all SEC guy. If he's an above average all SEC player, that's such a tremendous upgrade at a spot where they were dying for help. I mean, just dying for somebody that could come off the edge with some explosion, with some dynamics, and affect the passing game. And they got, maybe Tyler Barron turns into that guy, but he's not a quick twitch guy like Byron Young. I mean, I believe Tyler could be a force out there, but he's not going to, embarrass the left tackle by getting there. And just to go from having nothing at that position to having some hope, I mean, that's a big development in camp.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think another development, Austin, is on the offensive side. We talked about this in the 2-minute drill. Darnell Wright's different. Does that mean he's an all-world player? I'm not saying that, but I mean, here's a guy that started out fall camp as the number 2 left tackle. He was number 2 left tackle all spring, and he's sort of solidifying himself at that left tackle spot, and it looks like a guy who's gaining in some confidence, with each passing day. At least that's what it feels like.
Well, he actually was at right tackle in the spring.
That's right. That's right.
So like he didn't move to left tackle the first day of fall camp, which is why he was number 2, and quickly kind of ascended there to number 1. And then they started moving, Dane Davis over to the right side.
You're right.
To run behind Cade. So it's clear they want Darnell to be the guy. He looks like $1 million. He looks so good compared to what he was the last couple of years. And again, I think confidence-wise, little things matter to these kids. Like I know some people don't get it, but being in your old number 58, that you wore in high school, I think that mattered to him. Being back on the left side, which is where he wanted to play coming out of Huntington, but they put him on the right side when he got here, is something that I think mattered to him. And then I think he really enjoys Ellerby, and I think he really enjoys his teammates. He's gotten close with Caden Cooper. Those 3 hang out a lot. And, I think he's just in a much better space mentally than he was a year ago. And physically, obviously, we've talked about the improvement. That's why when I said in the interview 25 plus pounds, and then somebody said, well, what did you weigh? And he said 340. He weighed more than that. He was trying to be nice. It's like, if somebody asked me what I weigh 240. No, I don't. I weigh about 255. But I mean, like, you just naturally say, it's like, how tall are you on your driver's license? I think mine says 6 foot. And I'm 5'10". So I think everybody cheats a little bit, to the advantage with height and weight. And so that's why I said, what did you weigh coming out of COVID last year? And he said 360, and then kind of grinned. It was probably closer to 370. Either way, the kid's way different than what he was a year ago. And it shows the way he moves, the way he carries himself, 2 totally different things.
And Rob, Tennessee has to have him. I mean, he's as important as anybody up front. When you look at their tackle depth, he's got to be a mainstay at the tackle spot.
Without question. It's an obvious statement, but you can't stress how true it is. I mean, with the injury to Calvert last week, a guy that I imagine the staff felt pretty confident in as your 6th or 7th guy. Now you don't have much of a safety net on the edges on offense.
No, I mean they've got some bodies on the inside to work with. They don't have bodies on the outside to do much with. I mean, they are thin in numbers there. So who those 5 are going to be, how quickly they get to those 5. I'd be curious to see if Glenn Ellerby feels like he's got 9 guys he can plug and play at any point, or if that's not the case after a couple of scrimmages. Maybe it is. We'll find out. We'll see what their top 5 guys look like. Other individuals you think this is a big scrimmage for, Rob, or a big week for? I think scrimmage, you can't place it probably on one thing, but Austin talked about this is the week where you kind of find out who's above the line and who's below the line, who can help you, who can't. In your eyes, who do you think this is a big week for?
Not necessarily one of these individuals, but as a group, cornerback. How's that going to shake out? I mean, do the veterans fight off the transfers? I mean, what does the pecking order look like? I got no idea. I got no real idea what's going on at nickel. Do you? I mean, Theo Jackson,
Slaughter is really the only 2 candidates that you hear anything of. We'll see what Willie Martinez says later this week, but it feels like those are the only 2 guys.
Yeah, to me, it's a big week to figure out that position. But so secondary in general, I would say, or can any of the young kids help you, or is it going to be status quo at safety with Jalen and Flowers? And is there real competition at quarterback? Can Alante hold his spot? Does Turnage get in there? What about the other side? I think you got 4 guys that two that have played there and two that you brought in that are pretty talented. I think that's a pretty intense position battle.
I'm interested to kind of see Danico Slaughter, Rob. I mean, he's the guy that, is pushing Theo Jackson at nickel, and really it's kind of a two-man race right now until they eventually move somebody else over there. How much, can Slaughter get done in this second scrimmage today that could potentially push Theo for more playing time?
Yeah, because, it's one of those classic conundrums at nickel. As a coach, you feel confident Theo knows what to do and, knows what he's seeing, but is not going to always have the ability to get there and do something about it. Whereas Danico probably has the higher upside and not quite, the feel for the position.
Yep. I think that's 100% right. And how does that shake out and how does that move forward this week? Because it feels like Tennessee's going to move into game mode pretty quickly here. Maybe a camp mode through the rest of this week, Austin, and then by the weekend they're going to jump into some pretty serious game prep and go a week and a half or so with prep for the season opener. Is that the vibe that you get from over there, that they're going to kind of shift out of game mode by the end of the weekend?
I would bet a lot of money that Tennessee names a starting quarterback by next Monday.
So you think when Heupel meets the media on Monday of Bowling Green week, he's going to name his starter?
Well, no, technically, no, not next Monday. Like, it's technically about 11 days out before the first game. If you're talking about Tennessee starting, game week this coming Monday, so basically 6 days from now, that's what I'm talking about. I think the starting quarterback will be named by them.
Okay. So this week, you're thinking this week it settles it?
Yes.
And this tells a comparison to quarterback, but it's, some inside baseball talk. And since we just talked to Jerry Mack on Monday, who do you guys think the third tailback is going to be?
Jalen Wright. To me, that's the main three, and ain't even close. The other ones are way behind.
So you got Evan, you got Small, Evans, and Wright, and
Yep.
those three, and then there's a dividing line there.
Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like, in listening to him, Rob, it didn't feel like, and he wasn't knocking D Beckwith, but he seems like
very young in the position. Yeah,
still got a lot to learn there. But Tyon Evans has been better than I think they thought that he would be.
As compared to Terrell Davis.
Hey, yes, he was. That was Jerry Mack's comparison. I just kind of went, oh, wait a minute now. Wasn't Terrell Davis a 2,000-yard rusher in the NFL and his Super Bowl?
Two-time Super Bowl champ.
Yeah. Okay. He said that's how he ran the outside zone. It reminded him of Terrell Davis on the outside zone. Although I was a former defensive back at Georgia who didn't play running back. I'm just saying.
I always wonder what the coaches think up there. Like when they get some questions. It was Ben and then it was Mike Wilson that asked back-to-back questions about D Beckwith. And I think everybody's enamored with the fact that he's big and, he has a certain skill set. But it's been pretty clear that with this new staff, he's been behind the others this whole time. So, again, getting questions about a guy, but to get multiple questions, I think that's when like a coach is like, okay, I get he's big, but let's focus on the guys that are really, making some strides in fall camp.
Surprised they haven't moved anybody position-wise?
I am.
With Whitehead. That really surprised me.
But Whitehead, he talked about the physicality that he brings.
He also honestly, a linebacker. He said he was a high school linebacker.
Yeah, correct. And that's where he gets that from. To me, he's the most common sense pick to move to linebacker out of those running backs or move to defense. But I think that honestly, if you did a pecking order right now, you'd have the first three, and then I think number 4 would be Laneith Whitehead, and he's played less and practiced less than any of them.
What? I hadn't thought of it that way. I don't know that there is a 4.
Don't you have to try and do something with Beckwith? If you don't think he can play running back, he's a physical freak.
I just don't know where they think they can play him. I don't think they feel like he's physical enough to play tight end, which means if you don't like physicality, do you really want to move? Will he be a fit on defense? And then receiver, I don't know if he runs well enough. He's kind of in this weird position where he's kind of, what is he? They got to figure it out. Like he's got to either get more physical or get faster.
Don't you think he needs to show out on special teams to kind of to force them to find him a place to play? You know what I'm saying? Like be a guy that plays physical or shows up on teams and says, "Hey, I need more opportunity somewhere." Because I think that's his quickest path to the field is on special teams right now, and then try to use that to move him into a spot on the offensive side of the ball or a package or whatever to use him in some way. But we'll see what happens with that one. Among other guys, as again this week Tennessee has their second major scrimmage coming up later today, and then the rest of the week practice, and then they'll start to slowly move towards a game week mode here early next week or middle of next week and get moving in that direction. As we get ready to close out and go out the door here, Austin, a couple things on the recruiting front as we wrap it up. I know a lot of fans got a chance to see Walter Nolan in the Jamboree on Friday night in Knoxville, and know he talked with the media a little bit. We saw Desean Bishop go 73 yards for a touchdown with a cape on or a towel or whatever he had flapping in the wings. It looked like
when you're as fast as he is, you can get down there, you can get a little suntan in, just lay your towel out, lay it out.
It looked like he had a flag in the bed of his pickup truck as he was running down the sideline. What do you make of the Walter Nolan? I mean, he says a top three. Where is the Walter Nolan story right now? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, I think Tennessee is right up there. They're as high as anybody else is. And, they've done a really good job. Rodney's done a really good job. Again, I think crafting the narrative that he's some lock for Tennessee is the wrong narrative to craft, because I don't think it's a lock that he's coming to Tennessee. But I do think Tennessee has positioned themselves to a point where, like, that top three may change. I'm not sure Tennessee's leaving that top three. I think that they're going to be in this all the way till the end. And right now, I mean, I think Tennessee's positioned as well as anybody is.
Do you think Florida's going to be in that top three to the finish, or do you think Tennessee's the mainstay and everybody else could flex?
I think everybody else could flex out. I really do. A&M to me right now is Tennessee's biggest competition for Walter Nolan.
Wow, A&M out of the blue, and a recruitment that's got a lot of out of the blue in it. It feels like as he tries to get settled in. At Powell. Anything else on the recruiting front?
No, I mean, right now,
expected.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're just waiting to kind of see what happens with Alec A.O. Manor, and see what happens there. I still think Tennessee's got as good a shot as Stanford does. I don't think that Stanford's ahead of Tennessee or vice versa, really, for that matter. I think that he's not really sat down and talking to the kid. He told me, I've just not sat down and worked towards it, because at this point, he's not been accepted to Stanford. I said, well, is that what you're waiting on? He goes, yeah, kind of. But I said, so is that where you're going to go if you get accepted? He goes, no. He goes, but there's nothing to think about if I don't get accepted to Stanford. So, I think once that happens, because it'll happen. They're not going to, I mean, kid's very smart. Once that happens, then he'll start working towards a decision, and then we'll see what happens with that one. But to me, it's a two-team race for sure, and I don't see anybody else able to get involved.
I want both of y'all's take on this. Tennessee, because they're playing on Thursday night, will go out that first weekend and they don't have to get back into the office or come back in late at night to go to work their game on Saturday. They can stay out and go to games on Saturdays. They can go further out because they're playing Thursday night and get an early evaluation in on some guys. Is that a big advantage for Tennessee? I mean, or is that just that's a nice little perk to playing on Thursday night?
I think it's a nice little perk. I don't think it's in the big picture, as nice as, however many 100 hotels you didn't sell because people didn't drive in for the mid-state and stay all day, but it's a nice perk for, moving your game to Thursday, especially the first week of the season it's not the first week of the high school season, but first week of the college season when we can go out like, hey, we made it a point to get to your game, player X. And as you just mentioned, a lot of this early in the year, a lot of high school games on Saturdays, so they can double dip.
I will continue to drive home the point that Thursday night game, because of the fact that kids play on Friday, they're just not going to have a lot of recruits there, so you're going to have your local kids. So Walter Nolan night, I think that's what's going to happen too. Walter Nolan night at Neyland Stadium for that Bowling Green game, and then the next night, Walter Nolan takes on Desean Bishop. So if you're a Tennessee fan and you're wanting to go to a high school game, you can go see a really one of the top players, if not the top player in the whole class of 2022, and then one of Tennessee's top targets in state for class of 2023. His pal takes on Carnes the next night. You never know. You never know who may show up that one if the coach is out on the road.
I'll say this: Desean Bishop, I thought looked good in the summer. He early in the summer at camp, I thought he looked good Friday night. He was a good player a year ago, and watching him play in high school. But I see a lot of upside to that one. I do. I think he's got a real upside to his game. I think a lot of schools are going to find him over the course of the next few months and try to get in there. I may be wrong, but I just see that guy really improving leaps and bounds the last 4 or 5 months, Austin.
Well,
what do you
he's
think?
Just hidden. He's hidden at Carnes.
What do you think he is?
He's
a running back.
We've all seen him play. What is he in college?
I think he's a tailback. I think he's a tailback in college. I do, because I think he's going to weigh. I think he's going to weigh what, 210, 215?
Yeah, I mean he's 190 right now and ripped, shredded.
I think he can play running back. I really did. I mean, a year ago I wasn't sure, and watching him play, but just seeing him at camp and kind of seeing how much bigger he's got, I think he can play running back. I'll be surprised if
you ought to see him battle.
See him what?
You got to see him dunk a basketball.
Good. Got a lot of explosive athletic ability to it.
For all the talk of Powell, the best part is Desean Bishop, to the best of my knowledge, is a Powell kid who, again, in Knox County, you can file the waiver, and you can, if you're coming from middle school to high school, you can, if you're living in Powell, you can go to Carnes without a move. He's a Powell kid, is my understanding, that wanted to play basketball at Carnes because he thought Carnes and their basketball program was a better fit for him, and ends up really blowing up in football. So he's an interesting story, for sure. And, again, hidden over there at Carnes, hidden.
All right, Rob, in the hoops world, anything going on with that crew? As classes start on Wednesday, everybody's in tow and ready to go to the classes. They got about 7 weeks before they practice.
Yeah, middle of October. But they'll get after it pretty good in off-season workouts. Preseason workouts, I guess, is more accurate to call them now. But they'll be in the gym. There's going to be a lot of 5-on-5 stuff with everyone in the gym together. But everybody headed back. I guess the biggest thing I'm waiting to hear is Fulkerson. How close is he to full go? He's been on schedule, no setbacks, and do the freshmen continue to develop? And because you're going to need them. I mean, we saw last year that it's no matter how good they are, you can't. It's tough to rely on those guys every night. So, how good are they going to be? And then what do guys like Fulkerson, Josiah James, Justin Powell, who he's half a freshman himself after playing just half a season last year, what do they get from them? But a lot of optimism over there right now. I know the coaching staff likes the culture. They like the energy that these kids have. And, it's on the back burner for a while, but they're excited about what they've got.
I know that the summer is really important. How big is this summer for those freshmen? And is it more physical or is it more mental for the improvement of those guys? Is it more weight gain for a guy like Chandler or Huntley Hatfield, or is it more of the mental side of things with Rick Barnes, or you think it's a combination? Because those guys last year did not get the summer.
I think it's definitely, without question, a combination of both. And maybe, skill-wise, you can definitely add some things to your game. You can, and probably maybe as much as anything with this staff, you can take some things out of some kids' game. Like, Brandon, you can worry about that, the summer after your rookie year. We don't need you to, hit step back, fall away three-pointers here in Knoxville. You can worry about that, when you're playing in summer league in a couple of years. But I mean, I think getting guys, it's doesn't all get done in the summer, but getting guys to understand their roles, to play within themselves right now. Like, yeah, Brandon, in 2 years, you probably will be able to cross somebody over from the top of the key, drive left-handed down the lane, and hit a fadeaway off the bank. But right now, let's don't worry about that. And then the middle side, I think it's really important for those kids to get used to exactly what playing for this crazy SOB is like in practice every day. And so it's not just a shock for you when October gets here that, man, he's so nice. He was so nice at lunch today. And he was joking with my mom on the phone. And now he looks like he's going to throw a basketball at me. I think that takes some getting used to.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that, and that's a big part of this summer. So we'll continue to follow the growth and development of this basketball team, but certainly the priority right now is on the football front. Tennessee with their second major scrimmage coming up later today. We'll have coverage of that. Coach Heupel to visit with the media here in just a bit, and then we will have continued football coverage and recruiting coverage throughout the remainder of this week, and obviously getting you ready for Tennessee and Bowling Green coming up just around the corner. Just over 2 weeks away from kickoff for this season. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast. For Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.